Yeah, so if we just address that final point first, is that it's lifting weights to get bulky is just not really a thing. If it was, then every, kind of generalizing it, but every lad ever would look as jacked as they wanted to be, because it would be a case of, I'm going to lift some weights, I'm going to change my body composition. Resistance training is required to change body composition. So if we get into the muscle building stuff, that you just need to increase your volume over time. I think one of the things that I got really carried away with when I first started going to the gym was lifting as heavy as you could and lifting for as many reps as you can. And both things aren't very conducive to good long-term results, because firstly, you'll never recover.
Yeah.
Your technique is generally suffering, and it's just a really bad mindset to have. And like, the more we kind of use RPEs correctly, which is rate of perceived exertion, so I got you there. I think that, say if you're hitting a particular volume and you're kind of at an RPE 7 or 8, as long as you're able to have the perception of how this weight is feeling and you're increasing volume over time, it means that you can still put adequate stress on a muscle group.
Hey Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so in today's podcast, we want to talk about some nutrition tips, exercise tips, sort of training philosophy, cool. Some aha moments from life. And
Jesus,
so
there's a lot of them.
If you don't mind, just to briefly go through your little background, did you got to be a trainer, fitness instructor?
Yeah, cool. So my background is actually in management. So I was working for a chain of gyms. I kind of worked my way up through the ranks, ended up managing a facility, and then had the opportunity to try out personal training, try out fitness instructing, which in all honesty, the fitness instructing was never something I wanted to do. I think that was the biggest deterrent. I always had an interest in fitness, but thinking about getting on stage in front of a load of people, exercising, just scared the living daylights out of me. So that wasn't really on the radar, but I got a little bit of a nudge into doing it, and then haven't really looked back since. So since then, fitness instructing is something I do more so than personal training now. But I still have a personal training element as well as some online elements of my business. So that's kind of what I do. Yeah. Instruct, PT, and online.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I remember you when you just did a conversion, we were working together.
Yeah.
And I remember how quickly you got the coaching of the trip class. I was like, what the heck? This guy is doing what I was learning for like 1 or 2 years. He done it in 2 weeks. I'm like, what? So you definitely have some talent on talking people through the workout, which is cool. So what will be your favorite type of exercise?
I predominantly, and actually exclusively now, just teach spin. It's just one of those things that I feel like anyone can do, and that you can really progress to a stage where the numbers start to matter. So funnily, the way I got into it was when in Westwood there was virtual classes on. There was Les Mills RPM, and because it was a virtual class and no one attended, I could just rock in whenever I wanted and kind of the place to myself, and you kind of felt like no one was watching. And that was the part that kind of, I suppose, the bit that I really wasn't keen on to ever start going into doing any classes in the first place, is that I didn't want any eyes on you, because when you're new, the last thing you want to do is go into a room full of people and have to do something that's completely foreign to you. But yeah, so that's how I started on that. And then, like I said, I got a bit of a nudge into instructing, more of a kick, but that was, yeah, Karen Polly, Tina Bowles probably pushed me into something that has ended up being one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because I simply wouldn't have known I liked instructing. And since then, it's kind of just taken off and gone from strength to strength, from teaching quite a lot of Les Mills to now just a lot of spin. Mm-hmm. And yeah, still loving it somehow a couple of years later. So it's great.
Yeah, and how do you feel when you do so much spinning? What's the changes in your body that happens?
Well, like, I think it's all about management when you're doing the volume of classes that I'm doing.
You have to save yourself, obviously.
Big time, yeah. Like, I don't like telling my participants, but some of them I'll be honest and I'll say, like, I'm only working 60 to 70% in some of them. In some I'll even work even less than that, depending on how my legs are feeling. But it's really about tempering the amount of work and the amount of volume you're getting through. And I think my normal week is now like 12 to 14 spin classes, depending on how things are looking.
Wow.
So,
Fit man now.
no, knows how to manage volume.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's actually a really good point, because when I many years ago, I used to do so many classes myself, and I calmed down a little bit. I do more personal trainings now, and I remember how burned out I was, because I'd had to also go with the sleep. So when my sleep wasn't great, I was really abusing caffeine, and because of that, even when I pushed myself to finish the day and teach classes and motivate my clients, next day I would crash. And it would be, let's say, you work 5 days, and then on a sixth and seventh day on a weekend, you're like a zombie. You want to sleep. So managing volume is absolutely crucial, and knowing yourself, not to being in the ego constantly, like I have to always prove everyone I'm the strongest in the world.
Oh, big time. And I think because now, as I said, that I'm only teaching spin, when back in Westwood, when you were teaching multiple different programs, it's you kind of I suppose you tested a little more. So like in body pump, there's a certain standard that you should probably teach to it as an instructor, that you have X amount of weights that you should use, and whether that's going to be good for you in terms of managing volume or not, there's a certain appearance that you're trying to keep up with. And I think when it comes to spin, it's just a lot easier. I wouldn't like to say fake it, but just to manage it it's a lot easier.
Yeah. I always recommend people, when they just starting with the workouts, is just just don't make it too hard. Make it just enjoyable, because you don't want to create that sort of negative correlation to your training, that it's always painful, it's always hard, and they're not going to see the results immediately. So you have to really get someone first liking to exercise. And if it's too much as well, I think it's just discouraging, because not everybody is hardcore. Not everybody is in the same mindset like trainers, that I can push through. Some people don't have the same thing. What would you recommend to your new participants?
Just as you said, just enjoy it. Try and learn the moves. I think, again, talking spin, because that's where most of my time is spent, I think even just with resistance, people tend not to take enough, and that's what disrupts their ability to kind of stay on the music, so to speak. So getting them to enjoy it, finding the beat. There's something weirdly satisfying about actually being on the beat of the music. And I think every class I teach is based around that. So it's just really about that. And as long as you have a smile on their face and have them coming back the next time, I think that kind of goes to instructors, that it's never your workout. You really need to understand that you're doing it for your participants. You're giving them an experience that they want to come back to again and again and again. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, exactly.
So Chris, what makes your coaching different to other people? What's your unique thing? Because I know you're always very cheerful and always uplifting, and like you make people feel good in a class.
Yeah, I think authenticity is something that is super important to me, as in it probably wasn't when I was first starting. It was a case of, I need to learn the moves. I need to be able to get people to move correctly and safely, which is all well and good. But I think nowadays, there's a lot more of my own energy, a lot more of my own jokes. I probably swear more than I should in classes. There's just, it's my kind of dry sense of humor. And whether people like that or don't like that, at least I know that's what they're going to get. So if that's what they expect, that's what they get.
Chris is on the menu.
Yeah, and the music. So I change my classes basically every single class. It doesn't mean I'll have brand new songs, but I'll at least have a collection of brand new songs every single week. So I think in that regard, I think a lot of people like the variation. Like it can be literally anything from what's on the radio right now to some really heavy house through to some like 80s. And I think I had some 70s stuff in there recently too. So you have to teach to who's in front of you. And I think that's very important, and something that's often overlooked, especially when instructors have to make playlists at a time. In my class, and anyone in David Lloyd will tell you, the plan is there is no plan. I like that. Up phone has to stay in the hand because of current circumstances. We're outside and I can't manipulate anything else for volume. So I literally just make it up as I go on David Lloyd quite a lot. They won't like hearing it, but it's more fun for them. I enjoy it, and they keep coming back. So that's the main thing.
At the end of the day, it's exercise to music. So it should be fun.
Exactly.
We sometimes, as instructors, we're stressing about, not knowing choreography. I mean, I prefer doing freestyle because you don't have to think about those timing issues. But even then, I think we overanalyze. Even when I teach body pump, sometimes the stress comes in. Like, do I know it? Because even if you know it, you can still make mistake. it happens, like it's
Yeah.
just so many, it's like 800 up to 1000 repetitions. You have to know in blocks. There will be time when things not gonna be right.
Yeah, and I think it's just like your experience as an instructor is just how you deal with those moments. So you can own it. You can tell the participants that, yes, I've completely fucked it. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I've completely fucked it. Or else you can like try and cover it, or you can go and do something else. But it's more about how you react, as in when someone's quite new, the general reaction is kind of freezes, panics, and then maybe 20 seconds later we'll have a solution. Whereas the more experienced you are, even if you've made a mess of it, own it, just
Improvise.
chill, just keep going.
Improvise.
Yeah, it's really not an issue.
Yeah, own it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's more fun. And they get like, you're not meant to be a robot up there anyway. Like they shouldn't be expecting that. And like a few mistakes are probably part of a bit of personality too. So not that you want to be known for that, but I think it's really no harm.
I always keep telling everybody has different talents. For me, counting is not one of them.
I didn't think it was me either. In the very first IMT, back when we were doing trip, Jess McDonald was taking us through it. And it was on a bike, and you had to be
IMT, initial module training.
Yeah, that's the one
for non-Les Mills people.
I'm basically a non-Les Mills person now as well. But we were having to find like the beat of the music, and I could hit it, but I kept hitting it with the wrong foot. So like to this day, like in perpetuals can be kind of funny when it comes to the rhythm tracks. It's the part that stresses me out the most, where I'm trying to hit it with the lead foot. And for an instructor, the lead foot is the opposite to what the participant is, which is all well and good when you're talking body pump, and it's like your right and your left are different for one rep at a time. But trying to hit it every single time with the same foot is just something that still baffles me to this day. But we
wouldn't worry about that.
We move anyway. So
personally, non-issue. On different topic, Chris, something with weights, exercise in the gym. So let's say, you have typical goals for guys or even girls, build muscles, mostly guys, and then the weight loss. So what would be your approach to muscle building, weight loss, the aspects of weightlifting training, and also the myth, what ladies think that because you do weightlifting with heavier weights, you're going to get bulky. Do you think that's the...
Yeah, so if we just address that final point first, is that it's lifting weights to get bulky is just not really a thing. If it was, then every kind of generalizing it, but every lad ever would look as jacked as they wanted to be, because it would be a case of, I'm going to lift some weights, I'm going to change my body composition. Resistance training is required to change body composition. So if we get into the muscle building stuff, you just need to increase your volume over time. I think one of the things that I got really carried away with when I first started going to the gym was lifting as heavy as you could and lifting for as many reps as you can. And both things aren't very conducive to good long-term results, because firstly, you'll never recover.
Yeah.
Your technique is generally suffering, and it's just a really bad mindset to have. And like, the more we kind of use RPEs correctly, which is rate of perceived exertion, so I got you there. I think that, say, if you're hitting a particular volume and you're kind of at an RPE 7 or 8, as long as you're able to have the perception of how this weight is feeling and you're increasing volume over time, it means that you can still put adequate stress on a muscle group. I think that's something that I definitely didn't have a clue about. I didn't know how to program right. I didn't know what increasing any like sort of volume or load. I just knew load is just heavier and just lift more. And then 5 sets of 8 was just a thing for ages for no reason at all, which is another story altogether. But that's definitely something that I think when it comes to muscle building is overlooked by most people who go to the gym, because they know what they want to work, but they don't have a plan to do it.
Yeah. Just because before we jump to the other questions I had there, just to add to it, I used to be completely the same, and I started lifting weights when I was 12. Just 12. I got the dumbbells from uncle, and I was studying muscle and fitness magazines.
I think I weighed the same amount as you do now when I was 12. So had no muscle though, 0.
When I was 12, I was 45 kilos.
Yeah, I'd say my left leg was 45 kilos.
I was really skinny. But what I was trying to say is then I also got into overtraining and pushing too hard. And yeah, I was getting aches and pains, injuries in my body as well. But now in the last couple of years, I realized the volume doesn't have to be as big, intensity doesn't have to be as big, because there is a difference between stimulation for growth and distractions of the muscles and tendons and joints and
Definitely.
so on. When I actually look even such a things, this is a really big jump off the topic. But if you look at marathon runners, I know a few guys who run like 40 plus marathons, and they said such a stupid, foolish thing they've done, and it was just
Sorry, marathon
obsession.
runners.
But sorry, marathon runners. But for someone who done it and now is limping because his both hips and knees and ankles are destroyed, especially hips, and he just can't really. He's just struggling now. So
Yeah.
if he's reviewing now what he's done, I mean, yeah, you can do safely, but it's massive stress on your body. That's why going from one extreme, which is not exercising at all, to doing crazy marathons, which is extreme. So I would say even for that, you have to be smart about it.
Big time. And I think that kind of tied in nicely with the injuries. It's just so easy when you don't know what you're doing to overexert on a particular joint that you're really not conscious about, because at the end of the day, when you first go to the gym, you're only thinking about what muscle you're trying to work. You have no real concept of how a joint works, what joints you're even using. I think when you get to a point when you're starting to really think about how your joint works in terms of mobility and then applying loads appropriately, then your training just completely changes.
Yeah.
And it's nearly more health focused. But I think if we aim at health first and then want to improve aesthetics second is probably a better way at looking at things on a bit of a holistic level.
Really good point there. Really good. Yeah. And that's actually what I'm doing when I have a new client, or if I have a current client that I know that they need help with mobility. One of the simplest thing is just to get them to squat and go as low as you can. How far down can you go? And if they start stucking halfway because of hamstrings or inner thighs or quads starting to lock in and just not allow them in, I already know that they have issue there. So pushing them in the maximum strength in the gym would be just a bit foolish.
Yeah.
I'd rather work them on a mobility and improving that strength gradually, because most of them are more health conscious than just looking amazing. And I know that comes very slowly and gradually. That's why it has to be consistent for many months before they start to see those results. So to be able to train for a few months without getting injury, that mobility is a good investment to prevent injuries eventually.
Yeah. And mobility is the hardest thing to sell. Like, it's easy to sell mobility to someone who's been injured because you can alleviate or remove pain. But if it's someone who doesn't really suffer, but you're still trying to convince them that moving better is going to be better than moving less better, so to speak. It's just a difficult one, because I think anyone who's ever done mobility work in the past probably does less of it now, unless you're really focusing on it, because it's one of those things that you're doing for a certain amount of time, and then all of a sudden you're like, you get to the gym and I kind of just want to get into my workout. I might just do a little bit less, and it's so easy to just put in the back burner.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to mobility, periodizing it is probably a smarter decision, rather than kind of having a set mobility routine that you're going to do every day. If you have a certain joints, or even if you want to hit all the joints, but just knowing that you have this routine for X amount of weeks, and then you can start to remove it slowly. And if you really have to go back there, then you can bring it back in. I think that's just knowing that it's something you have to do is definitely beneficial long term. And weirdly, on one of the points you made about squats, one of my favorite tests is doing an overhead squat. I'll do it with all my clients, because you can see hips, ankles, you can see T-spine, shoulders, everything. And
overhead squat, I mean holding a bar overhead and squatting.
Yeah, with a dowel or a broomstick. So jump in, broomstick goes onto the head, they press straight above the head, and then overhead squat and see how low they can go. Just pause at the bottom. Mm-hmm. But definitely gives...
That's very challenging for mobility.
Yeah, exactly. But what you tend to see a lot of is anyone who's kind of rounded or particularly stiff through the T-spine, the bar will be pointing forwards. And then
T-spine,
you can...
thoracic spine.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's definitely one of my favorite tests. And like you said at the start, with anyone, I try and get everyone, regardless of what their goal is, to be health seeking from the standpoint of trying to move better. And then once you can move effectively through different ranges with all of your joints, ideally, then we can start applying loads in whatever amount to give you whatever goal you're looking for.
Now, to touch on that a ladies weightlifting training and myth of getting bulkier? I definitely know that's non-issue, but what do you think? Well, if somebody is like, oh, I don't want to train, what would you say to them?
Yeah, like absolutely do for health. It's the best thing you can it's probably the best thing you can possibly do. I think it's one of those that if you were to take what women see as their standard training and what men see as their standard training and just flip them around for half the year, you're probably getting quite an effective training split across a 12-month period. But yeah, for any females, I think, yeah, like absolutely lift weights. You never have to have a fear of getting bulky. It's not, it can be a hormone thing. I think personal trainers are very quick to say, oh, don't worry, you don't produce enough testosterone, which is probably true because you're going to be 4 different physiologies a month. But I think anyone, if you're comparing yourself to either people who are bulky, who are females, most of them are taking steroids, or they may have some sort of, maybe not even just PCOS, but some sort of like androgen, I'm not going to say defect, but just something that produces more testosterone. So like if you look at CrossFit,
a little bit more manly.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look at CrossFit athletes, generally they're like big upper backs, big traps. And that's more of a hormone thing than probably just training on its own. So yeah, aim for putting on as much muscle as you can and then see where you end up. Like it's never really a bad thing to have too much muscle.
It's easy to lose them.
Yeah.
That's also a thing,
Very much so.
It's I definitely think the same. Like building muscles, even for weight loss, it has such a great benefit because of the damage to the muscles creates more afterburn. The repairing of the muscle fibers will cost fuel, and more significantly than from cardio training. So that's why I always sell the benefits of, your bone density, your elevation of good hormones and all that stuff comes in. But I really like recommending to do a bit of everything, a bit of mobility, a bit of cardio, a bit of weights, and also focusing on hydration, nutrition, and sleep. So they kind of improve a lot of aspects of life rather than just someone goes to the gym and is like, I want to build muscles. And all they see is that one sort of like very narrow field of fitness, and they're missing out on all the other stuff. That's why I like to talk to fitness professionals and discussing these things, so people can listen to the podcast and just get some fresh ideas and expand their lives in a way.
I think what's important as well is to enjoy what you're doing, and if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, at least understand why you're doing it, because I think the thing that's going to bring you back to the gym over and over and over again is doing something that you like. So especially if we talk weight loss in particular, just find that thing. And whether that thing is just going walking, if it's resistance training, if it's doing classes, go and do more of that if weight loss in particular is your goal. But know that for your composition, for your health, you should probably have some resistance training there. But having the knowledge that it's just an important part of what your process is, then I think people are a lot more, easygoing about going in to do it. There you go.
Cool. Are there any nutrition ideas that you came across and you go like, wow, why didn't I do this earlier? Sort of like, I know you told me as a kid you didn't eat much vegetables. Maybe like uprising was different. And then what was your biggest wow? Why didn't I do this in nutrition wise?
Jesus, there's a lot to unpack there. I think counting calories is one of the things that I didn't do for a long time, but I kind of got results without doing it. But I was someone who carried a lot of weight, so I think when I started tracking, that kind of put things in a better perspective, and it allowed me a little bit more flexibility. I wouldn't want to come on here and say that, yes, absolutely tracking calories is the way forward, but it definitely gave me a lot of aha moments. And one of the ways I phrased it to a client the other day was that if I'm being strict on tracking with the intention of not tracking eventually, because that's where everyone should be, you don't need to scan every single thing that you eat. That's never the goal. But if in the short term you are scanning everything or putting in food retrospectively, it just gives you a better idea and helps you when you want to be mindful down the road. And that's something that tracking and counting calories was an exercise that I've really found very beneficial.
I do recommend it as well. If I have new clients and they want to lose weight, I'm like, look, learn this for a week or two, track everything, and that gives you that image of what are you doing, like what's the volumes. You might be 30-40% off with your calories and you might still overeat.
Yeah.
So for that is just gives them that idea of like what 300 calorie meal is, what 500 calorie meal is, and recognize a drink of alcohol, how much fuel that is, and then have this kind of caloric balance sheet, and then realize, okay, how active have you been during the day or during the week, and then just match those numbers and say, look, are you going forward towards your goals or not? And then hunger is a good friend for weight loss.
Yeah.
The more hunger and more movement, it's really the solution, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, and just to kind of go back on that last question, that was my biggest aha moment, was because it showed me how many calories there were in different things I was eating. I think, for example, like alcohol, biggest aha moment, because I never would have tracked it. And I'm not telling people that they need to go and track it, but just having an idea of what that intake is like, that's how it's very easy to wipe out your deficit from a week in one night of drinking.
So it's like 4 drinks, let's say 4 beers would be like one big pizza.
But like but
that would be like one pizza size, like 800 calories.
But we're talking about like Irish people here who love a load of pints. Like a lot of my friends would go to the pub, and like 6 to 12 pints is kind of where the range is, maybe more, and then depends on if there's afters. That's going down a completely different rabbit hole.
And then food as well,
yeah. So, and like when you really add that up, it can be like, again, the range can be like from 1,500 as much as 4,500 calories, and
excess,
and
non-essential calories eventually.
Yeah, exactly. But
for fun calories, which people actually will have to carry.
Yeah, but I think it's more that there's a dismissiveness towards what goes on. It's because I've dieted really hard throughout the week, and now it's my weekend. I'm going to do whatever I want, and there won't be too much repercussions because I've already had this really good week. But your really good week could have been making that whole deficit that you've gone and wiped out with your whole night of whatever it is that you were doing. So that's where people get a lot of headaches around weight loss, especially. But again, I'm sorry, I'm backtracking again. My biggest aha moment was for tracking, or to find out what was in different foods. But I think it really depends on the person. Like, not all of my clients for nutrition are going to be tracking. Would it, in an ideal world, be easier for me as a coach, being able to see all the data and now being able to use that data and make informed decisions? Absolutely. But it's not going to work for everyone, because not everyone has the time to track. It's a skill that you learn over time, and that initial investment can be quite a lot for some people. So it's depends on the coach. It's what approach is going to work best for the person. Because if someone's working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, tracking is the last thing they need to do. So then you're going to be looking at, how can I give them better habits so that they can create this deficit?
How can they do less work so they can have life?
Exactly. And then along with different habits, you can look at different eating patterns. Like, can I implement some sort of fasting? Can I switch out? Like, where's the low hanging fruit? Are they drinking in loads of calories? So then we say, just switch to 0 calorie options. There's always something with everyone, but every single person is very individual. And that's where it's important that the coach knows who they're dealing with.
Chris, what would be your best tips of post-workout nutrition? It could be even protein shake and some of the strategies people use. Do you have any tips on post-workout? How to recover when you have 2 classes in a row, when you want to maximize, let's say, your recovery to get as quickly to the next one, full energy?
Yeah, so 2 different questions. So one is definitely for, if we talk classes, if you're going one after the other, anytime exercise is going to be any longer than 90 minutes, especially that's intensity based, but let's just say anyone who's training for a period of 90 minutes or more, probably worth having some sort of carbohydrate intro workout. If you're a fitness instructor and you're moving from one class to the next, then you can very easily, through jellies or through maltodextrin or something like that, it's just really easy, get like 30 to 50 grams in, something that'll just tie you over for the next one. Otherwise, you're probably risking a little bit of muscle breakdown if you're a bit glycogen depleted. But then post-workout, especially for resistance training, obviously we need to make sure that there's an intake of protein. A rule I usually use for per protein serving, depending on the individual, is something I learned on my course, which is Macnutrition Uni. I don't know if I should be saying that out loud.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. You can cut this bit out. Is 0.3 to 0.5 grams of protein per serving per kilo of body weight. So it's going to be, for an 80 kilo individual, you're going to be anywhere from 24 grams up to as high as 40 grams. Somewhere in that neighborhood, that should hit leucine threshold, which is important for muscle
5
building.
grams, isn't it, of leucine?
I think it's less than that. It's like 2.5. It's low.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's, might have to edit this bit out because I can't say for sure.
I'm not sure either.
But basically, as long as you're hitting, like, at nearly every body weight, as long as you're hitting that 0.3 to 0.5 grams, you're probably hitting enough and you're hitting leucine threshold, and that's what you need for building new tissue. So that's obviously super important. It's a bit of a myth that you need carbohydrates post. So, like, extra carbohydrates isn't going to improve your muscle building potential, but it will give you energy if you have to have a second training session later on that day or the next morning. So that's where a carbohydrate intake would be helpful. And then post-workout, you can get creatine in there as well. Creatine, I really don't mind when you take that in the day. It's just really important to have it with a carbohydrate source whenever you're having your creatine. 5 grams a day will do it. You can use some sort of loading phase if you really feel the need, but
they don't really think it's necessary anymore.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's probably worth, like, if you are really interested in your different levels, like, of any sort of nutrient within your body, go and get yourself blood tested. Like, it's like, why are you putting in these vitamins and minerals and if you don't have any sort of knowledge behind it? So I think I can't really recommend it enough. And blood testing, like, get a referral from your doctor, whatever that'll cost you, is definitely worth its weight to get done. It's funny what those things show up. So there you go. I had too much vitamin B12 when I got tested back in back in February, and I was actually taking a multivitamin, and I had a look on the label, and, like, it was giving me 4,000% or something a day of my daily recommended
But it
amount.
seems like B vitamins shouldn't be the ones that you can overuse. Like, your body should regulate. You know, like, it would be more fat soluble vitamins we should be worrying about. But that's the problem with multivitamins. You don't know what you're deficient and what you're already in excess.
Exactly.
And then it's kind of similar example to class that is a one size fits all. It's the same, like, one multivitamin is like, it's designed to this universal human, which nobody is.
Exactly.
And then we're feeding everyone on these multis. So, you know, like, we have that knowledge of vitamins and minerals, do this and this and that, and it's all good, but then we don't really know. So blood work definitely is good. I also done mine, and I realized I had too much calcium, and everything that I measured was at the max out. So I was thinking, okay, well, you know, do I really need to spend this amount of money as well on supplements, or can I just ease off? And it was a little bit in my head, you know, like, you get into the habit, you wake up, you get in I always start with a glass of water, and then, you know, I take my supplements with it, and then have breakfast. So I just realized you also create habit of, like, constantly pumping that multi in, you know.
Exactly.
I have all sorts of other supplements as well, but now I'm kind of more doing it sparingly. I just realized I don't really need to.
I think especially if we're talking multivitamins, like, you should always aim firstly to try and get all your vitamins and minerals in through food. Having variety in your diet is going to do that. You don't need to eat every single vitamin or mineral every single day. That's not how we work. So it's really, it's just kind of a bit pointless. But I'd say a good time, if you were going to take a multivitamin, is, say, if you are doing some sort of if your goal is related to weight loss, because you're probably in a hypocaloric state, so therefore it's less likely that you'll be getting in as many nutrients as when you weren't in a hypocaloric state. And so it's probably a good idea to get a multivitamin in.
I think so.
And obviously, and we'll say that blood work is not something you have to do, but it's no harm knowing.
Yeah, especially if somebody is really deficient in something, and that can cause a lot of issues.
And fatigue, like loads of people, that hits it. Completely interrupt you.
I mean, lack of certain vitamins can cause schizophrenia and depressions. And how do you know what you lack? Definitely not lacking more antidepressants, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's all related. I'm actually studying a lot from functional medicine. I watched a couple of guys on YouTube, doctors, and talking about how they have the study cases. They are like great researchers out there, and they talk about how through food they can heal people. And it's one of the big thing is the inflammation, and it's that sort of like imagine that type of person who kind of have lack of sleep, goes to work, stressing in the work. It's the diet is mostly sugar and fried foods and alcohol, and it's like everything they do is it's kind of stressing their body out, and then obviously it can cause all sorts of diseases. And how transforming like that habit into something different can completely reverse certain of those issues.
Yeah, I think I immediately get my guard up a little when I hear like functional medicine and things like this, because it's not too much of it is anecdotal and it's not so evidence based, which is kind of my approach to basically everything. But I think when you look at a lot of the interventions that happen, the things that you were talking about, it was just that it's if you can really just affect lifestyle rather than even thinking nutrition for information, just if you can get more active, if you can sleep better, if you can have some sort of mindfulness. And it's very easy for people to just throw around the term mindfulness, but actually giving yourself a break from whatever it is that you do, whether it be your family or whether it be from work, just give yourself a chance to wind down. And that's through anything that you enjoy, like could be a podcast. Funny that. Could be through watching a film. It could be just going out walking.
Yeah.
But it's just really important that people try and make, before you start trying to address nutrition is the magic bullet or medication is the magic bullet, there's so many lifestyle interventions you can try and make first that kind of, again, the holistic approach to things. I think that's really where the magic lies.
I think if somebody have health issues and they really suffer, like they should be looking at what's the easiest thing to change. Like as you said, if you don't sleep enough, your body's not regenerating enough. So you're basically deprived of your life force.
Yeah.
That fixes you. That's the first one. The sleep is just absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I'm completely on board there. I think too many of us are chronically fatigued. Like Matthew Walker's book was amazing. And I think a lot of people have read it or have listened to it or have gotten all the main topics. And I listened to a podcast he was on recently. And he said he may have been just kind of a little overstated in some of the things he said in terms of just some of the points around like sleep medication and the detrimental effects of, I think, alcohol per se. Maybe I'll have to edit this bit out because I could be wrong with it. But I think that he's just brought a lot of eyes to the sleep component of health. I think that's one of the best things that people have really have ever looked at, because something you do all the time. It costs nothing to try and improve your sleep unless you want to go on track or whatever. But for just getting some better sleep hygiene practices, spending more time in bed, looking at your phone a little less before you go to bed, just really simple things.
Yeah, it's actually something I used to be. Well, I'm still quite addicted to screen time. And, like I like my VR racing, and which is extremely bright unless you drive in the night. It gets me super excited as well because you really immerse yourself into racing, and it gives me quite an adrenaline rush. And then straight after that, I try to go sleep and I go like rolling, and it's like not happening.
No, not
they
great.
say like for every hour of that screen time, after a certain time, you need another hour of calming down, so your melatonin will actually induce you into some sort of sleep state. So I'm like, oops. And then I'm actually tired, and then it's also more likely you're gonna do worse nutrition choices. You're gonna eat more addictive foods. They're more for like a sweet, sour, salty,
more appetite generally. Yeah,
you will eat more as well, and you also, your conscious decisions will be a little bit more like less conscious, more subconscious. It's like more addictive personality will sneak in, and just like a whole avalanche of side effects from it. And it's actually amazing when you do it right and you just wake up and you're like full of energy. Yourself in your field of work, like as trainers, the only currency is your energy and how you feel, to be able to motivate people and be there with, let's say if I have 6-7 people in a day and I want to have all these 6-7 45s or 1 hours to be like for them and being there rather than like, I want to sleep now.
Yeah,
You
big
know,
time.
so energy for me is absolutely most valuable thing, just how I feel.
Yeah, and I think we're probably lucky or I say luck, but we've kind of fashioned our lives in such a way where it is kind of health focused and that we can pick times that we sleep at. I know it's not possible for everyone else. Like I have clients who are shift workers. I know a lot of trainers who have to get up
I
at
used to do
6
it.
and
I used
5
to
a.m.
the nights.
Yeah. So it's just how much can you do with your set of circumstances? If it's working for you, great. If not, how do you change your circumstance to improve?
Yeah.
If that's something that you want to do, because health isn't necessarily just your physiology. It's also about what you get enjoyment from. It's about what gives you fulfillment. So I think when you look at that as a totality, it's not, we could talk here all day about how to improve physical health and maybe some mental health, but it's important to look at it from a lot of different perspectives.
That's why sometimes, you know, like if somebody wants to improve their life, they have to really think about why do they stay in a job that is really unhealthy for them, like the hours they work, stressing out. There might be so many other jobs. Sometimes we get comfortable and don't want to change.
Our creatures of habit.
Creatures of a habit.
That's what happens.
Yeah. So sometimes even just to find a solution out of the life's trap, because we sign up. Let's say you go to the job and you know you willingly sign the contract. It's like, okay, I'm gonna work there, but then we get stuck over there. So sometimes it's good to just push yourself out of the comfort zone, and that's something we both did. Went freelancing in the last. So the COVID was definitely my big transformation because gyms were closed and people wanted to exercise, and instead of needing the facility, well, hence there was none. They had no other option than having the personal trainer training there online or at home or whatever parks, and the need for the gym was basically changed for need for a trainer and exercise them itself, and that was a big game changer, and you know it's changed my life now.
Yeah, I would say like the way it affected me was obviously the gym's closed, no classes, no clients. Shock to the system, I think, and everyone was in the same boat for the first 12 weeks or so, that it was maybe it'll be in a couple of weeks, maybe be another couple of weeks, and it was just pure madness.
You're talking about the first lockdown?
Yeah, the first lockdown. What things did you do for your clients? Did you move online or what?
I moved online, but the first lockdown, it wasn't really clear how long it's gonna be closed. So I wasn't doing much. And I was gaming more, sitting at home more. It was March and so on. I was eating more. I was getting a little chubby. I get a little pissed off of myself being a bit lazy and losing motivation. And I think for a lot of people mentally, the lockdowns and the whole pandemic did a lot of stress because nobody knew when it's going to be over. And then you cannot plan your usual things. You can't visit anyone. We were like properly like 5K lockdown, you know. But what I want to say is that when the second lockdown came, everything was completely changed because people didn't wait. They didn't want to wait another 4 or 5 months until the lockdown would be over. Immediately there was like, I want to work out. It was after Christmas. So we were like straight after Christmas into lockdown pretty much. And, you know, there's the time when people put on weight and they needed that mental health as well because there's less, you know, sunshine. We get a little more depressed even because of that. And so I felt like a lot of people really changed their attitude.
Yeah.
You know, as far as the, you know, income, a lot of people that I used to have as clients, they still had jobs and they were busier than ever. So the money were not issue. And then you have, let's say, a husband and wife, 1 or 2 kids, and they're all locked into one house. They were literally desperate to go out and do a workout, even if it was like drizzling, rain, cold. They just wanted to go out because for them it was escape from sitting in a chair working, kids, husband, wives at home, and it's like people start to be irritated of each other. So having that sort of, I'm going out to exercise, and it releases a lot of tension and gets you the good hormones on the right levels. And so you know you can't lose with investing money for your own sanity and health. I think if people have money, having invested for personal trainings, it can be a game changer.
See, I think if we just kind of like jump back to the freelancing, my decision didn't come in the pandemic. I'd already made the move pre-pandemic, which has probably made things even worse, if I'm honest. When I made the move to freelancing, it was end of 2019, basically the start of the year 2020. So I kind of jumped into something where I knew I was taking a bit of a pay cut. I had no real fixed hours, though Perpetua did all they could to give me different hours to make basically to give me a living. So I can't thank them enough for that. And then David Lloyd offered me another opportunity. But going from having some sort of job security at Westwood, where I spent forever, to moving to freelancing for it all to be taken away like 3 months later was definitely a bit of, or 2.5 months later was definitely a bit of a kick in the teeth. But still think it's been one of the best decisions I've made. Get to do more of what I want, work less hours. Yeah, it's definitely something that I really enjoy. So yeah,
it's fulfilling as well.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, that's the way the fitness industry was trending. Obviously, everything changed when the pandemic happened, but I think now that we're coming out of things and things are opening back up and majority of the adult population are vaccinated, and when things do properly open, I think that freelancing and instructing is going to be something that won't go away. It's only going to grow. The payment in this industry is only going to get better. Built through more competition with more boutique gyms. And I think just that model, we've seen it happen in London. We've seen it happen elsewhere. It's massive in the States. And Ireland, I don't know if it's just Irish people are typically a little bit behind when it comes to looking after their health and paying for their health. But if London is anything to go by, I think yeah, being a fitness instructor is probably a good place to be.
Yeah, but for someone who is listening, who is in like 9-to-5 job or whatever time is for their work, and they do, let's say, this very robotic job that I hate, like there's so much people can do. I mean, like we were not always into personal trainings and all that stuff. I had my own, boring jobs, which I left because they were sucking my soul out. And I was telling myself, I had a very comfortable, moderately paid job, and I could spend another 40 years like that. And I was telling myself, look, would you want to spend 40 years like this? And I said, well, definitely not. So I was starting to seek something else, and then the right situations revealed the path. And when I got into it, I actually was pretty broke first 3 years, and only now I'm kind of benefiting for the last 6 years from the fact that I stayed long enough and actually had a decision to be getting better and better. And eventually, I believe if you are getting good, really genuinely good, you will attract the right people that need exactly what you need. And I used to have a life coach, a friend, who was telling me that you only need to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of your ideal client. And this can apply to anyone to do anything. So you can have a skill of fixing your computer, installing software, but you might have a neighbor who just need that stuff. And you just that's why the networking and all the sort of social media is good for, let's say, people can show what they do. And then, we sometimes might outsource something. It's like, look, I'm not too busy to do this, but I know that this guy, because I know him from Facebook, he seems credible, he does this. So I think as we going through the ages, through, to this, 22, 23, and we get more electric cars and all that, AI will start taking over our jobs, basically, because they will be thinking much faster than we are. They don't get tired. They don't need breaks as well. They don't need to get paid as well.
That's true.
That's a big one. So there will be also a whole niche of, jobs that will need to be there as well. So I think if people think they're stuck in their jobs, my recommendations will be just to see what you can do, what you can learn. And if you spend, let's say, 2 hours a week in half a year, you will have so much knowledge about something that eventually can be some kind of side income as well.
Oh, definitely. And I think people have responsibilities, and I think it's always important to look after those responsibilities. And I think that's why people get stuck quite often. But like you said, it's about putting yourself in situations, whether that's a course that you're doing, whether it's talking to people, whatever it is that you want to do that puts you around something that you have an interest in. And then if you can turn that interest into a side income, and then that side income can potentially be a full-time job at some point, that's kind of the route you want to go. I think it's very hard to just kind of fully chop off your legs and go and do something else. Like I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. But I think if you're in a circumstance where you have very little responsibility and you're unhappy with what you're doing, but you're doing it because you're getting a good wage, is money really the thing that drives you long term? Is probably a question you need to ask yourself. I know for me, I would have been very motivated through my late teens, early 20s. I'm not saying I made loads of money, but I'm saying that money was a massive driver in decision making, until I made a conscious decision to try and get paid for things that I like doing. And once I started doing that, started making more money, I had a lot more fun doing it. And I'm probably pretty fortunate that I had the circumstance to do it at the time. But I think that doing something you enjoy and getting paid for it is something that everyone can probably find. There you go.
Yeah. Like in our jobs, like just the fact that we are around so many people, especially fitness classes, because you have the whole group, whatever, 20, 30 people in a group, sometimes bigger, obviously. And
not at the moment.
Not in the moment, exactly. But it's fulfilling for me. It's interesting. I always learn something from someone, and it's good to make connections, and like
big time.
It's rewarding on its own.
Yeah, and like the fact that you're in group fitness, that you can affect the lives of quite a few people at a time. There's something that's really fulfilling about that, and it's not even the people who you talk to on a daily basis, because obviously they're getting value because you're having conversations, and like you're getting value because you enjoy doing your job and talking to these people. But it's the comments that you get that you're not expecting. It's if you've missed a class and then someone comes up to you saying, "Oh, where were you?" and you sometimes you don't know the name of the person, you probably know their face, or someone says, "Oh, I really like your classes. I usually book when I see you on the timetable." It's little things like that where just like, I was having a really shit day maybe a few weeks ago, and someone made a comment very similar to what I just said, and like completely flipped my mood. And I wouldn't really call myself someone who's like sulking about ever, but you're probably affecting more people than you think, and that's super fulfilling.
We don't realize that. Yeah,
definitely. Absolutely. And I think that's what also kind of filters into personal training and the nutrition bits. Like, I really enjoy training, and I didn't think I was as into how the body moves before, but now it's something that I've been reading up on, I've really researched a lot of, and it's now really interesting to me. But also nutrition, like I think the only reason I got into nutrition was because I didn't want people to feel like the way I was feeling. Like, I didn't want to feel the way I was when I was carrying loads of weight, when I was really unhealthy. It was great going out and getting drunk every weekend, and probably too often during the week. But when you start getting the health consequences, and when you really think back on where your headspace is at with your confidence, with your body image, they're dark places, and the more people you can help with that stuff, the better you feel. And that's the exact reason why I do what I do.
Yeah. Now we have, I think, slightly different approach from whole new generation of young people, kids, teenagers are constantly, comparing themselves to these people on Instagram who are literally posing for these photos, always kind of like putting the filters, and, like this lady's going through all these procedures on their face and other places. Yeah. And then these young people start to have that kind of need to catch up with the trends, and I don't think so it's very healthy.
No, I wouldn't want to be a teenager now, definitely not. But
it's tougher for them because they don't see the I'm 82 guy, so we had no remote control on black and white TV. I remember that a radio didn't have remote control, you had to go dial in. But I think we had the kind of like, I remember the contrast coming from there, and now having a smartphones, laptops, all the technology now helping us. I appreciate that, but I think we have to be smart about not to be slaves to it, but to be the masters of it.
Instagram is a highlight reel at the end of the day. You're only seeing everyone at their very best. Yes, there's a lot of body positivity pages now, but I feel like that's a little bit glorified to the point where there's a little bit of pushing. I sent a video about fat phobia the other day. And I've like no problem if you're comfortable in your own skin. And in fact, it's very healthy to be comfortable in your own skin. But I think when it gets to a point where you're pushing something that is probably going to be to the detriment of people's health, then it's something that you might want to just kind of just really think a little deeper about. Again, we'll probably have to edit this out because it's going to feel like I'm having a pop at all the body image people. So maybe let's not go there. But I think just generally Instagram, and like when you talk about procedures as well, that people have the option, and whether you're in your teens or early 20s or whatever age you are, but if we're talking about that cohort of people because they're the ones who are getting really affected by social media, then yes, you can go and spend money on your imperfections if that's what makes you feel happy. But what I would say is that you also have a unique ability to go and try and change things for yourself through lifestyle and habit. So maybe start there first, and if it's really getting to you, then maybe look the surgical route. I think it's just, it's very tough to aspire to something that's unattainable without surgery.
Yeah, I don't even think about those things, obviously.
I know people have had things done.
Yeah, personally, I'm, not into that. And I don't really feel like if I had a partner or friends, like I don't really think ladies need to wear makeups and all that stuff. I just feel like, like, why would you bother with all of that unnecessary stuff? But I'm very pragmatic. I always try to be as sort of, like, what's the point? Just because everybody's doing it, like I'm all about not to be one of the sheep, really. Like if everybody goes left, I was like, okay, see you on the right side.
I think it's just Irish people generally, or maybe this is just a generalized topic, but like I suppose when you're younger, you're quite like brand conscious, and that's what sets your kind of social status. And then going through your teen years, that's more about body image and how you look. And now that's just influenced so much by Instagram that this is what people, that it's gone from having brands through to I need to look a certain way. And physiologically for some people, it's just not possible. So I think if you can just compare yourself to yourself, can you become a healthier version? Can you become a better looking version of yourself? Then by all means do it. And again, if that ends up being surgery, though I wouldn't push it, then but
I've been experimenting with different diets. I've been reading and listening to different people, different opinions and so on. And like every so often I want to get leaner, especially for summer. I don't know why it is. So maybe just because we wear less clothes and I'm more aware. I don't want to be looking the chubby one. I always aim for a bit of perfection. Since it was maybe 17, I was always, like, I think it's natural to put on weight in the winter. I think it's, especially if you live in a cold environment, I think naturally our body is inclined to put on some storage and insulation. But then also it's time Christmas and excessive eating and feeding, and that also have a like double effect on
That's
that.
you hit the nail on the head.
Like
there.
you have like a factor 1, a factor 2. And then, like it's kind of funny when people say the New Year resolutions, but I always felt that like New Year is really good time just to, that month it's good just to start working for summer. If somebody put, let's say, 2, 3, 4% body fat extra, so that could be extra 2-3 kilos of the fat, and then like that will be a good time to achieve that really good shape for spring already in summer, because it gives you enough time to not to stress about it and to do it smoothly and healthily. And like,
I think it's interesting that you say healthily. Like, what do you mean by healthily?
Not to stress yourself to the fact that you hate your life.
But like this is an interesting concept, because I think there's people see it as a healthy way of losing weight and a less healthy way of losing weight.
What is sustainable weight, a way of doing it? And actually, some people would be happy to lose weight anyhow. It doesn't matter if it's healthy or unhealthy. Is there a pill? Is there a procedure? Is there a method?
Well, if we talk about a non-procedure based, but if it's, we all know the basics now. Calorie deficit has been shoved down everyone's throats at this stage, but it's how you're going to make that deficit. And I think that purely, it kind of goes back to what we're saying a lot, is that it's very individual based, but adherence is going to be the most important part to any diet. is if you can adhere to what you're trying to do, then you're going to get your desired result. Now, whether that means you're in like a 200 calorie deficit per day exactly, which would be very hard to do for 10 months, or whether you're going to go super low calorie for a couple of weeks of maintenance, go super low again, the net result is probably going to be the same, though your energy levels, your feelings of dietary fatigue will likely be a little bit different. But I think there's the perception of people losing weight really quickly and that it's something that's unhealthy is inherently wrong, because it's just a different method of creating this deficit to get you to your goal. So I've a client at the moment that has had some issues with her period and a bit of energy availability before, but she wants to lose weight, which is fine. And we're in a place now where we can create a deficit. But if she wants to be in this deficit based on her history, that's someone who I'd want to diet them on as many calories as I can, so that we're maybe losing, like, say, a pound, maybe half a pound a week, something that's relatively, I won't say easy, but it's very achievable. However, if someone is really wanting to go and lose quite a bit of weight, and for example, they may have some tracking experience or some experience losing weight, then I kind of like the method of going really low if they can take it, then take them back to maintenance, then like make them go really low again. And the reason I say that is that during this period of, say, if it's a 2-week window where you're going to really push the diet, it's a lot more reasonable for someone to push for 2 weeks than is to sustain for 6, 7, 8 weeks.
Get you.
So if during that time you're going to be super adherent, then I'm all about that life. Whereas if, like I said, with an 8 or a 10-week diet or something like that, it can be very easy for little slip-ups to happen, or you'll overeat with the intention of making it back up again during the week, but it doesn't end up happening, and then your results get a little skewed. And there's a lot of research that backs up that losing weight in a quicker time period not only helps with adherence, but actually longer term, it's shown that you keep the weight off better than doing a sustained diet over X amount of weeks. So that's this completely opposite to what a lot of people's thinking is. Everyone says if you lose it quick, just put it back on quick. Well, it's not really that. It's just that you haven't learned to live at that body weight once you've lost the weight. And that's why you're yo-yoing like this.
The habits also jump back to where they were before. Exactly. The same patterns.
Your set point is completely different. So you just need to, and I give this advice to anyone who is losing weight. If you're currently on the way there, and if you're in the process, and the process being super important because you're going to spend nearly all the time in the process. A goal is just going to be a certain timestamp in time where you hit this desired result. So enjoy being in the process. But if you are in that process and you're nearing completion, then hopefully you're working with a coach who's going to put you into some maintenance or start to slowly put it back, or who's going to slowly introduce calories again. But just learn to live at that body weight. So if that means extending your tracking for a little while longer, just so you get a better feel for what it is to eat mindfully at this body weight, then do it. But just don't just go from diet, holiday, and then diet again. It's not very conducive to long-term results, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I even did something like fasting. I did 5 days without any food whatsoever.
Okay.
And I did a couple of 3 days and bunch of 1 days. I started first 1 days and then 2 days and then 3. And then after a while, I lost so much muscles. And I didn't really train in the gym. I was doing more like a cardio, running, hiking and all that stuff. But I remember how, I was just kind of testing myself. So, like even the hunger, it's really, a lot of it is a mental game. There's a lot of research on mice, for example, that if you have overfed mice and you have the underfed mice, the hungry ones live longer.
Just be careful though. That's on mice, not humans.
Well,
that's the evidence based again, because it's like there's umpteen studies that are done in animals that are probably not applicable based on the dosages, because like that's what we go, if you talk aspartame or any sort of like artificial sweetener, people are going mad nowadays saying that, oh yeah, but if you have that, it's going to ruin your microbiome, you're going to get XYZ in terms of gut issue. But at the dosages that they were giving the animals, it's like you'd have to consume boatloads as a human. So yeah, it's not.
So you'd be skeptical about those type of
Very skeptical.
information.
Yeah. So like in terms of any sort of research,
But
like,
this is something I was always kind of like getting the information and then being a little bit skeptical, and I was like, oh, this is bad. But then more I talk to scientists, it's like it's always relative risk. It's like you have to have enough big enough amount to make it toxic. That's from Stephen Sullivan. He mentioned that a few times to me. And I didn't realize that because you have it in sunscreens, you have chemicals. And he said like that unlikely it's the toxic enough or carcinogenic enough dose to make it. But when you look at the label, it's like, oh, this is something with the benzene, and that's carcinogenic compound. So you then just start to be worrying about it, and you have always find someone somewhere says, this is terrible, this is gonna kill you.
Well, anything in a super dosed amount is probably not good for you. And you can apply that to every vitamin, every mineral.
Even water.
Yeah, literally everything is like anything in way too much.
Sleep too much
is going to be to your detriment. Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's very important as well if you are someone that looks at research. It's what kind of research are you looking at? So like obviously we have a randomized control trials and our like systematic reviews. These are things where you really do want to take quite a lot of credence based on what they're saying. However, if a test is being done observationally, I was actually talking to someone earlier about like the whole red meat concept. They were saying, oh, I'm trying to eat less red meat. And I said, why? He said, oh, well, because they say it's bad for you. I've seen it on the news a couple of times. Well, I don't know, like do they quote the studies? Do they know like the kind of cohort of people that they're looking at? So that's why observational studies can be a little misleading, and every single human has a certain bias to prove something or has a certain bias that they think. So and then even after observational studies, then I'd kind of look at like animal style. Like it's I think just superdosing anything.
So what would be your major kind of thing that you believed and then you studied more and realized that was a bit of bullshit? I've seen loads as well, but what would be your like kind of like, I can't believe I believe this?
Oh, this one all the time. And I know this has been dispelled many times, but just eating more frequently and often every 3 hours boosts your metabolism. Utter rubbish. It's that one really hit home with me. I was convinced you had to eat like every 3 hours because then I'll start burning more fuel because my metabolism will keep going. It's just it's a pure case of energy in, energy out.
I actually find out that when I eat less frequently, I usually eat less calories. And also, because you have that longer hunger, you have lower insulin, and that is already on its own fat burning. So from point of view of losing fat, for example, that longer windows between the meals could be eventually the more beneficial than eating constantly, having some kind of elevation of your insulin, which could be a problem. But they talk about, that extra stimulation of insulin is always like if you have excess sugar in your blood flow, it has to convert. So you kind of stimulate, you kind of like provoke that system constantly. So that's why sometimes when people eat too much sugar with every meal and drink every sip, they have a bit of sugar. So imagine that steady level of sugar in their system and the need to pump insulin in, and that basically is the insulin sensitivity. That could be an issue.
Yeah, then, I mean, like in reality, the only people who need to look after insulin are diabetics. So I think if for general populations, if you're in any way healthy, look at your lifestyle. That if you're constantly consuming like processed sugars, you're probably over-consuming food, which is going to have a negative implication on your health and therefore potentially insulin sensitivity. But is it absolutely imperative that you control your insulin? Probably not, unless you're diabetic. So, of
course, yeah.
So in that case,
it's to control the food.
Yeah, but it so kind of rewinds the fact that if you just go and kind of try and make better choices food-wise, even in terms of just your consumption, like if someone is particularly overweight and they do lose a considerable amount of weight, you increase your insulin sensitivity, for example. So it's like I think rather than taking a really deep dive into these small parts of hormone production or hormone usage, you can just really simplify it into lifestyle factors. And then if something isn't working properly, then go and get checked.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Very pragmatic.
Sorry to shit all over whatever you said.
No.
But
I like the kind of conversation about it's just not that we have to agree or disagree with things, but I think it's only healthy that we are expanding our horizon by having also different opinions, because Steven actually said that recently, like I was editing video and I really got me, like we basically as we watch, let's say, YouTube, and you find your topics that you got your education on, you actually get algorithms where it feeds you on the same field of topic, that you kind of reassure what you know. You're not actually learning new stuff. That's why reinforcing that one belief, which might not be true, especially now during the COVID when people do all their research and all that stuff. We were talking how it's the danger that people start to be, getting the information, especially on COVID now, and it's basically be consuming the information which is causing panic, fear, and all that stuff, and how they're only gonna be getting more of that stuff that will reassure them that this is bad, that is bad, and that can cause the whole conflict. And now you have these scientists, professionals, doctors who actually whole life spent studying and following the most recent studies, and they saying it's safe and so on. So it's the fact that it doesn't matter if it's nutrition, if it's COVID, if it's exercise, like having like some kind of like broader horizon of information, not to just take from one source.
I think it's a critical mind. That's what you need, is that question everything and be prepared to change your opinion on things.
Be flexible.
Exactly. And if there's research to back up what someone's saying, investigate the research. Like, for example, there's a lot of doctors that talk on YouTube, but if I take a very popular one, like Dr. Eric Berg, I think, for example, I'm pretty sure he's a chiropractor. Like you're not talking about like medical doctors in a lot of the cases. And these are the people that are running functional medicine, and like there's just a plethora of really bad information out there, and you're going to, anything that fits your confirmation bias, that's what you're going to kind of gravitate towards. And that's what you really need to be very careful about, because that's why we have like a lot of anti-vaccine movements, and like you said with COVID, that it's people go down this rabbit hole and all of a sudden they're believing other people who they believe to be well educated, and
they're becoming experts themselves, preaching others as well about it.
That's a massive issue.
Fear is a big mover as well.
Exactly.
It's a massive.
Exactly. And depends on where your headspace is at when you're affected by this kind of stuff. So just if ever someone's saying something, try find a reference. And if you don't understand what the paper says and you're just relying on this person, at the very least check their credentials, because it's there's too many people putting out really, really bad information, but it's wherever the attention goes, the money flows. So that's where you really need to be very careful. You can use that. That was pretty good. I've never said that before, but that was,
So, now it seems like we're allowed to travel a little bit. People will start to be changing a little bit of their lifestyle as well, that they will actually be sitting in airplanes, sitting more, maybe driving on their holidays, sleeping in different bed. I've noticed, actually, I wanted to talk about it and now it just popped up into my mind that, just the fact that somebody was exercising for months and then suddenly they stop for like a month. There's a real life case, someone that I train, and suddenly the glutes get very tight and straight ahead back pain. And, so I think a lot of people need to also realize when they're changing lifestyle like that, even for holiday, sometimes that can induce massive pain in the back. Just the fact that just sitting constantly can also change the muscles.
Yeah, I think that if you do suffer with pain, number one, go get it addressed. Whether that's with a physiotherapist, any sort of medical professional, by all means, go and get it looked at. After that, develop a strategy that alleviates that pain. Following that, have some sort of strategy that you can go to whenever the pain comes back. I think with physiotherapists are generally really, really good, but in our profession and when you're training, because we do get a lot of people that have been injured who have gone to physios before. Physios in my experience, and I'm not talking about all physios, are really good at treating the pain, and then for post treatment, there's a certain number of exercises given, but rarely is there progression, and very often the client moves away from what the physio told them to do. So I think it's up to professionals like ourselves that this person has this issue, they've been prescribed this by the physio, but then we need to progress on from where that physio left them. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just super, super important to have progression in your training and in your pain relief. Otherwise, it will be something that will just come back, because inevitably all these injuries that you pick up, they're just a byproduct of your lifestyle. It's very, like, not very rare, but it's not as often that you're going to have just an acute pain from
An accident.
some sort of trauma.
Yeah, fall.
But in terms of like those niggling injuries, they're generally just lifestyle based. So once you can assess or get assessed how to deal with it, then having some sort of strategy in place by way of a workout, by way of stretching, that's super important.
Could be such a thing like posture, and just the fact that we are in slouched over position.
I've been in
and
this
looking
whole
down.
thing leaning on my arms here because I don't want to get away from the microphone. So that's why generally not like this as much. In fact, I drive my car at the bottom of the steering wheel is where I hold it, because it puts my shoulder in a nicer spot. I know it's really weird, but
safe.
I was very late to the party driving, so
I thought all the cool boys drive like this.
Yeah, exactly. You see them with the arm out the window.
Like this.
Looks like I have a floating steering wheel and it's just driving itself. So
I think steering wheel is overrated anyway.
Yeah, but again, you're trying to whatever amount of time. So if you're someone who is in a car for ages and you are resting your arm on top of the on top of the wheel, your arm protracted, like you're probably going to have some sort of issue in your shoulder. Like it's just standard. Like there's going to be imbalance everywhere, and no one should aim to be perfectly balanced, because imbalance is part of life. Like you're meant to have a good side and a bad side. So that's absolutely fine. However, if the bad is giving you pain, then go and address it.
Yeah. I had actually Kung Fu teacher back in the days in Slovakia when I was training Wing Chun, and he was saying it's better to be master on one side than being average on both.
Definitely.
Especially when you survive.
Especially if it's reaction based. You have to know which hand. If you can write the same with both hands.
If an artist, when they do paintings, ask, Picasso to actually do masterpiece with his left hand, I don't know if anyone would buy it, but it just shows how it helps us to survive, to be dominating one side, excelling one side, and put more effort into that one side. Yeah,
but I think also just being conscious of where you're weak. Like that's it. I think it's very easy to let niggles go for ages and ages and ages and not be assessed. So it always just, if you are feeling something, go and get it seen to. And if you're not, if it's something where you're just a frequent gym goer, and yes, you've been struggling with a little bit of knee pain or a little bit of shoulder pain, I think a knee is a really easy example to go with first. Then if your knee is sore, look at the joints around the knee. So like what's above it? Is your hip
around the knee? Yeah.
No, like what's above your knee is your hip. What's below your knee is your ankle. Do you have full mobility in both those joints?
Oh, yeah.
Because if you do, then all the muscles around your knee are probably working properly. And if not, then we can kind of focus on, actually my ankle mobility is pretty poor. Maybe I need to start moving that better, in which case that can relay itself as relieving that knee pain. And also, like, if you're feeling any pain, just figure out why it's happening or when it's happening. Yeah. That's unbelievably important. And then from there you can go and try and program around it. So what
tools would you have then yourself as a trainer? Would you send clients to your therapist, or would you be helping them yourself because you understand it?
I'll always ask them first. So like anyone who's had particular issue so anyone who's had a particular issue usually will have gone to a physio. Anyone who isn't moving well and is feeling pain, I'll always recommend either a physiotherapist or an osteopath. I went to an amazing osteo this year. I was actually suffering a little bit with my back and my pelvis, just a touch. And it was recommended to me by a good friend, Rachel Bolton, and I went to him, and he was absolutely amazing. And I think having everything put back in alignment really helps. So I definitely recommend an osteo. However, if it's someone who's just having a little bit of pain, be it in their back, knees, shoulders. They're the ones you get more often than not.
I think knees and shoulders are the most, and back.
Yeah,
No, knees,
back,
shoulders, and back.
but as a byproduct of back is like T-spines are probably like, because when I say back, it's probably lower back. With
it could be lower back, it could be upper back, it could be neck. But again, just imagine people do this most of the day, looking down on the screen. So 5 kilo, it's pulling down most of the day.
Exactly.
So that just like having a good posture is taking a lot of that. Also pelvic alignment. Like if you have an anterior pelvic tilt and your belly is out, your lower back is arched excessively, your lower back will be all the excessively pressurized point. Yeah. So actually having the muscles correctly pulling the pelvic floor can actually put all the levels above it into the right position.
But again, it kind of comes back to, if you're feeling your lower back, probably look at the hips. Well, first of all, look at where you're feeling pain and when you're feeling pain. So is it a loading thing? Am I in flexion? Am I in extension? When am I feeling the pain? After that, then I'll kind of look at, is the pain localized to a certain point? Obviously not a physiotherapist, but this is something I'll still do in an assessment. Is the pain localized to a certain point? So is it something that could be structural? Is it something that could be structural? And if so, well then I can't do anything about that. I can get you to roll. I can get you to do some sort of myofascial release, but I want to send you to a professional for it. But if it's something that you're just kind of feeling a little niggle, then again, I'll kind of look above and below. It's how do your hips work? How tight is your T-spine? Can you move? And like more often than not, people are terrible through the thoracic spine. They're just so tight. And it's one of those places that you don't really think about a huge amount, because either your shoulders are forward.
So for listeners, thoracic spine, that's just basically that kind of like a upper back.
Yeah, kind of area. Like middle back all the way up towards just below your neck. Well, so you've got your kind
of like a shoulder blades area, and that whole kind of like tension area. A lot of people feel exactly. So you say T-spine, I think some people might not realize that.
Yeah, I'll always say T-spine for shorter.
Yeah.
But yeah, are you able to extend and flex through those vertebrae, and can you rotate on either side? And that's one of those things that you can work on a daily basis, and it takes little to no time. Yeah. But it's something that over time will make a massive difference, especially if I feel like a lad is a generalization, but you see it in males a lot who love to do a lot of pressing for their chest. Generally, if their T-spine is going to be in any way compromised, you're probably not able to move your shoulder through full range. Therefore, you're going to be overloading at some point. And I think everyone I know has had an injured shoulder from pressing. So it's try and mobilize your joints first and learn the right technique. It's always you versus you. It's not how much you can do to impress your friends.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Too.
Yeah.